Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Cyclonic Thrift channel. This is our third week in a row talking about some of the new Fallout commanders that have come out. And this week we have a pretty unique commander, actually, bringing in a mechanic that we haven't really seen a whole lot of in Commander recently. And so the card that we're talking about is Dr. Madison Lee. She's a Jeskai commander, so she's blue, red, and a white for a 2/3 legendary creature human scientist. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you get an energy counter. And then she has a bunch of tap abilities, so you can tap and pay 1 energy counter, and you give target creature +1/+0, trample, and haste until end of turn. You can tap her and pay 3 energy counters to draw a card, or you can tap her and pay 5 energy counters and return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, right off the bat, there's 2 things we noticed with this commander. One, energy counters. This is all about energy counters. You know, energy counters are not something you see a lot of in Commander. It's not a very well supported mechanic. There's a lot that you have to do in order to accumulate enough to be able to get payoffs, and they're widespread enough that it's hard to have a focused strategy in a deck centered around energy counters. But what Dr. Madison Lee here does is, one, allows us to have a reliable engine for accumulating those counters, right? Casting artifact spells is going to be a very artifact-heavy deck. Artifact decks are also famous for having discounts to the artifacts that they're casting, so we're going to be able to cast a bunch of these each turn and accumulate a ton of energy counters because of it. And it also gives us 3 very different payoffs to use our energy counters. So we can either buff up a creature, give them a bunch of keywords, we can draw cards if our hand's getting low, or we can return artifacts from our graveyard directly to the battlefield if, you know, our combo piece got destroyed, or we've milled ourselves and there's a juicy thing right in that graveyard ready for us. So it gives us a variety of options at a variety of costs, so you're not stuck out of the game if you really don't have any energy counters. You know, that first one will still allow you to do some combat tricks and get some damage in. So there's a lot of fun things we can do with this commander. Like I said, the 2 main things, it's going to be very artifact themed and obviously very energy counter themed. So accumulating those through other means and then having big payoffs for them. So the first card I want to talk about is Aether Swooper. It's 1 in a blue for a 1/2 creature Vidalcan Artificer. Has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, we get 2 energy counters. So right off the bat, right, accumulating those counters is going to be key. And whenever it attacks, we can pay 2 energy counters, and if you do, you create a 1/1 servo artifact creature token. Creating that artifact fits into the theme. You know, maybe not the biggest bang for your buck, paying 2 counters to create a 1/1, but in a pinch, if you've got nothing else to use them for, this is a great way to use the resources that we have. Next is Aether Storm Rock. It's 2 and 2 white for a 3/3 creature bird. Has flying. Whenever Aether Storm Rock or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get an energy counter. So, somewhat similar to Dr. Madison Lee, you know, a little bit different in terms of we're just focusing on creatures instead of artifacts. But if you're casting artifact creatures, you get the hit off both of these. And then whenever it attacks, you can pay 2 energy counters. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on it and tap up to 1 target creature the defending player controls. So it can help clear the board a little bit, pump this guy up as well. Again, very, very combat tricky-ish with this card. And then we've got Aether Squall Ancient. It's a big boy. It's 5 and 2 blue for a 6/6 creature Leviathan. Has flying. All of these creatures have flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, you get 3 energy counters. So this is kind of fun. It's every upkeep, you know, of yours. You're going to get it every turn, and that 3 energy counters right off the bat is pretty significant. But its big ability is you can pay 8 energy counters and return all other creatures to their owner's hands, and you can activate this only anytime you can cast a sorcery. So it's basically like a Cyclonic Thrift or a Cyclonic Rift, but it's for everyone, and it's just creatures. Other than this one. So, you know, it does hit you as well. It does return your creatures to your hand as well. But to be honest, with Madison Lee wanting these, enter the battlefield effects with our artifacts, might not be the worst thing, and it's going to set your opponents back quite a few turns if you can get this off. And to be honest, 8 energy counters, especially when you're getting 3 at the beginning of your turn every time, that's not that hard to repeat. I think we can definitely get the right, group of cards going to the point where we could do this every single turn and just keep all of our opponent's creature strategies on the shelf. All right, and actually, the Aether Squall Ancient pairs really well with the next category, which is these massive payoffs for the energy counters that we're accumulating, because, again, I just want to reiterate that kind of, not necessarily one-sided, but that ability where you can bounce all the creatures back to the owner's hands is something that we'll be able to take advantage of really, really well, and something our opponents will not be able to take advantage of quite as well. And so it's going to be, it's just, I can't emphasize enough, this is a very cool ability and is going to come in real handy. And then in terms of other cards that will be able to get a lot of good payoffs with our energy counters, look no further than the commander, Dr. Madison Lee. Like I said, you've got a lot of variety here. It can be very versatile depending on the situation. You can do it at instant speed because it's just a tap ability. You're not putting any mana into it. Just got to make sure you have enough energy counters. So she just, obviously it's her deck. She fits perfectly into the strategy. And so it's gonna be really nice to have her on the battlefield and just have those options open to you at any time. This Confiscation Coup, it's 3 and 2 blue for a sorcery. You choose target artifact or creature. You get 4 energy counters. Then you may pay an amount of energy counters equal to that permanent's converted mana cost, and if you do, you gain control of it. So this is a way you can nab pretty much anything, no matter how big it is, depending on if you have the energy counters to do it. Or if it's just, a little small thing, like you want to get that soul ring or something, you get the 4 counters, you only have to pay 1, so you've got 3 left over for whatever else you want to do with your resources. So this is a nice little fun card. It's going to help you, take some really powerful stuff from your opponents, and potentially save you in a point if they've got a combo piece that you need to get rid of. Next card is Janjeet Sentry. It's 2 and a blue for a 2/3 creature Vidalcan soldier. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy counters. A pretty significant theme here. And then you can tap it to pay 2 energy counters, and you can tap or untap target artifact or creature. So there's really 2 uses for this in our deck. Well, I guess 3. You could use it to tap down some of your opponent's stuff. You could use it to untap or tap your own creatures, kind of do some combat tricks with that. Add a big blocker when your opponent isn't expecting it. Or you can use this on our commander, right, who has a ton of tap abilities, and it'd be even better if we can use those tap abilities multiple times. So being able to activate this, target Dr. Madison Lee, get her to untap, use that again, will be really nice. And this one is Mirren Spy. It's 2 and a blue for a creature, 1/3 creature drone, has flying, and whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may untap target creature. So this is actually an insane card in this deck. 1, because we have a ton of artifacts in this deck. We're going to be casting them a lot to get those energy counters off of Dr. Madison Lee. So we're going to get a ton of activations of this ability where we can untap a creature, which, as I already mentioned, we can either do with our board to, if we just want extra blockers, but most likely we'll be doing it with Dr. Madison Lee, where we can just use that ability over and over and over again. And if we can get easily could get this off 4 or 5 times in a turn. And as long as we have enough energy counters to keep that effect going, we can do some crazy stuff. All right, this next card is Chakram Retriever. It's 4 and a blue for a 2/4 creature elemental hound. You partner with Chakram Slinger, so there's a lot of things with that. That is not in this deck, so we don't have to worry about it. But whenever you cast a spell during your turn, untap target creature. So very, very similar to Mirren Spy. Even a little bit better. It's more mana, so it's going to take a while to get down here, but it's not restricted to just artifact spells. It's any spell you cast, and we're getting that untapped trigger. And that brings us to the vegetable portion of the deck. For those who haven't seen the channel before, the vegetable portion is when I talk about some basic foundational categories of cards that you have to include in your budget decks. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to keep up with the higher powered, higher budget cards at the table that just have access to a whole nother level of power than we do. Those categories are mana ramp, card draw, and removal, and we'll go through them real quick. The first is Enthusiastic Mechanaut. It's a blue and a red for a 2/2 artifact creature goblin artificer. It has flying, and artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Again, artifacts are famous for this, just reducing their casting cost because most of them are colorless, so they don't require, if you get that cost down enough, you can be casting artifacts for free. Again, accumulating energy counters with a commander, a lot of good things we can come up with that. Next is Ethereum Sculptor. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/2 artifact creature Vidalcan Artificer. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Like I said, very common ability, that's something that's gonna pack a real punch in this deck. If you can get 1 or 2 of these out, it's gonna be crazy. And the last is exactly like it. It's Foundry Inspector. It's 3 mana for a 3/2 artifact creature construct. Artifact spells, you guessed it, cost 1 less to cast. But moving on to the card draw section, first card is Sage of Latnam. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/2 creature human artificer. You can tap to sacrifice an artifact and draw a card. So again, it's a tap ability, which we have a lot of synergy with because of the commander. We're sacrificing artifacts, which again, our commander allows us to bring back to the battlefield, so it's not quite as big of a downside as in other decks. And yeah, draws us a card. This should be a repeatable effect if we have some other untapped shenanigans going on. So it's a good card to keep in the deck. Next is Thought Monitor. 6 and a blue for a 2/2 artifact creature construct. Has affinity for artifacts, which actually just means it costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control on the battlefield. So in an artifact themed deck, most of the time that means you're casting this for 1 blue or 1 and a blue. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards. So obviously, if you're paying 7 mana for this, drawing the 2 cards is not worth it. But like I said, most of the time you're casting this for 1, maybe 2 mana, and at that point it is absolutely worth it. It's an excellent enter the battlefield effect, and it's a thing we can bring back, right, with Dr. Madison Lee's ability. So it's a really good card to keep in this deck. Speaking of cards that will be excellent when they come back with Dr. Madison Lee, Coveted Jewel is a 6 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards. You tap to add 3 mana of any one color. And then whenever 1 or more creatures an opponent controls attack you and aren't blocked, that player draws 3 cards and gains control of Coveted Jewel, and you untap it. So this is outside of Dr. Madison Lee. This is a really fun card to have on any game. You can get a lot of good reactions from people. It helps keep the game moving, helps attacks to happen, helps cards to be drawn, gives people access to a lot of mana. There's a lot of there's a lot of benefits for having this card on the battlefield. But there is always the downside of your opponents being able to get benefit off of it, right? But in this deck, I think we have a unique opportunity to be the only person that takes advantage of this. One, it's an artifact, so we're going to reduce that cost from 6. It's going to be a lot cheaper. Again, it comes in, we draw the 3 cards, we get to use the 3 mana right away. But we have a ton of sacrifice outlets on our board, right? So once we get all the benefit from Coveted Jewel, say we sack it with Sage of Latnam, right? Sack it to draw a card, get into our graveyard. On our next turn, we use Dr. Madison Lee's ability, bring this back, draw the 3 cards, add 3 mana of any color. It's a repeatable effect. We can sack it again to draw another card. There's a lot of upside to this without having to give our opponents any access or opportunity to get this card, because we do everything with it on our turn before they have a chance to attack. And then we're going to get into some removal spells. Super straightforward, super simple. I won't spend too much time on this. First is Path to Exile. It's 1 white for an instant. You exile target creature, and its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Swords to Plowshares is very similar. It's a 1 white for an instant. You exile target creature, and its controller gains life equal to its power. And the last one here is Organic Extinction. It's 8 and 2 white for a sorcery. It does have Improvise, so your artifacts can help cast this spell. Essentially, you can kind of turn any artifact you control into a mana rock that taps for a colorless. So, you know, you've got your artifact creatures out, they can all tap and help pay for this. But this card destroys all non-artifact creatures. So again, in a deck where a lot of our creatures are artifacts, we have a very heavy theme there. Wiping the board of all non-artifact creatures is, for the most part, going to be a bit of a one-sided board wipe. We'll definitely lose some, you know, collateral damage. Other opponents will have their Thopters or their Servos or whatever, and like little 1/1 artifact creatures. But for the most part, this is going to be a pretty devastating card to take off. And it's going to set your opponents back a ton and give you an opportunity to really jump ahead. And that brings us to the Thrift pick for the deck. For those of you who hadn't seen the channel before, the Thrift pick is not necessarily the card that I think is the absolute best in the deck, right? But it's the card that I'm most excited to see in play, right? The card that I think I'm going to be able to do a ton of really cool things. I'm excited to see it interact with the board. And the card for this deck is, we've already mentioned it, it's Mirror and Spy. It's 2 and a blue for the 1/3 drone. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you can tap, or you can untap target creature. Like I said, the interaction between this card and Dr. Madison Lee is insane. First of all, because both of them being 3 mana, you get them both down early. You can start the shenanigans really quick in the game, and the amount of value you're going to generate from this combination is incredible. I'm super excited to see this play out, and I am pumped to have this card in the deck. And that brings us to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, if you think I missed any cards or might have overlooked some really powerful pieces to this deck, please comment them down below. Let me know. If you're not already, please like, subscribe the video. And until next time, stay safe and stay thrifty.